everybody. You're going to have your mask on when you speak. Please speak loud enough into the microphone, of course. I would like to remind you that the town's, go look at the town's webpage. The comprehensive master plan is currently underway as far as with a survey. And there's also going to be a workshop, a meeting, I believe it's next week. But go online, take a look at it. I believe there's 700 and some odd people that took the survey. But for all those watching on TV and those here, it's an important thing to do for the town and for yourselves. With that, I'd like to start. Cornwall Fire Department, 94 Glenita Avenue, public hearing, resolution of lot line adjustment.
Good evening.
Matt?
This is on for public hearing, Mr. Chairman, and we have been directed to prepare the subdivision approval resolution, which you have before you this evening.
Rich?
All comments have been addressed.
Mike?
All the necessary variances were granted. The only comment is we have to make sure this one is approved before the next one because of timing. The lots have to be existing to be approved this way.
And as mentioned, this is a public hearing tonight. Is there anyone in the audience who would wish to be heard on this? If not, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, being there's no public comment, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
We also need a motion to adopt the lot line adjustment.
Mr. Chairman, I'll offer the final subdivision approval resolution of the planning board of the town of Carmel, number 20-07, dated October 21st, 2020, tax map 44.14-1-23 and 24, Carmel Fire Department subdivision lot line adjustment. I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is Carmel Fire Department, 94 Glenita Avenue, open public hearing for a site plan. Mike, I believe you had no comments. Rich
All comments have been addressed.
and Pat?
All of the site planning comments have been addressed, Mr. Chairman, but I think the applicant wants to talk to you about the access driveway issue, which there's been some modifications to.
Yeah, I believe we were toying with making that one way. There's the exit to the, from the garage, fire trucks is there. But I also understand there's been some changes to that, so can you please take the board through that?
Sure. For the record, my name is Michael Licori. I'm an attorney at Hogan and Rossi, Brewston, New York. I represent the Carmel Fire Department. I've been tasked with dealing with TD Bank for purposes of facilitating the lot line adjustment and easement over the parcels and dealing with the issue of traffic across the driveway. When we proposed the project to the board, we had proposed to keep the traffic two-way. Obviously, the board raised it as a potential concern for cars interacting with the newly proposed apparatus bay. And we had pretty significant back and forth with TD about what's the best way to handle the particular interaction between our uses. Before they would agree to commit to one-way traffic, they asked us to have a traffic study performed so they could fully understand what the amount of cars or how many cars interacted on the site on any given Friday, and that's typically their day where they have the most amount of traffic. So we had that analysis prepared, and about 20 cars per day use that driveway in multiple directions. And while that number isn't significant, ultimately TD Bank came back to us and said, okay, we would be willing to agree to one-way traffic. However, our preference would be it would be one way for the entire length of the easement for everybody. And immediately it was a non-starter for us because the volunteer ambulance corps is part of this. That would eliminate their two-way access. We won't agree to give up two-way access for our particular use because we need to have that as far as our design goes. And so we went back to TD and said, look, we can't agree for ourselves for the one-way. We're looking for an agreement for you for one-way only for yourself. And the best way that we could resolve it was we could put policies and procedures in place on behalf of the fire department to direct traffic for whenever the fire department uses that access way. And that proposal is summarized in my cover letter to the board, which is basically whenever a fire apparatus would come onto that driveway, essentially coming up in this area, we would have our members of the fire department exit the apparatus. If there's traffic on the driveway, they would direct traffic appropriately, whether it's to wave a car on or to stop a car while they enter and exit, and continue to do so for use of that access way. I believe the department is probably the best entity suited to deal with that proposed use. I'll tell you, if it was Stop and Shop or some other, commercial outfit, you would have manpower changes and they probably wouldn't follow those guidelines. But the fire department is uniquely trained to deal with policies and procedures because we operate strictly in accordance with policies and procedures. So essentially, that's our proposal, that we keep the two-way. We put a policy in place for our members to handle traffic the way that they're supposed to. Frankly, it's part of their function. They handle traffic, car accidents, and other types of scenes every day of the week. We also believe, and there's something we recognize and TD recognizes as well, which is that right now with the location of the access driveway, it runs here through the fire department parking lot and around. We believe once that building is built and you are coming up to Bink Drive from here, a lot of people use it as a cut through to go up to 52 to avoid the light. And even though there will be a new access point on Garrett, we think that the building itself will just serve to preclude people from making the extra effort to drive around the building back into something that now more resembles even more a parking lot to go back out to 52. The other thing, and the basis for TD and their position is when we first proposed the project and were in discussions, it was pre-pandemic. The focus on the drive-through was not really, it was relevant, but it wasn't such a big issue. And what the pandemic has shown is it's put a lot of pressure on the drive-through, so it gets a lot more use than it did before because people obviously weren't going into the branch. And while that softened a little bit, the branch is back open and people do go outside. TD's focus has shifted. So early in our discussions, this really wasn't a big topic. And what's happened now from TD's perspective is they don't really want to do anything to limit access in and out of any of their branches because we don't know how long we're going to be in this situation. And they think that we're going to have a shift where people probably won't return, or some people won't return to going back inside just as a matter of course. So the only proposal we could come up with is the one that we've presented, and we think we're uniquely suited to manage this particular use in a way that's safe and in a way that the board could support it.
In addition, from a site planning perspective, we did add a secondary flashing yield sign to the other side of the driveway as people are coming into from Bink Drive. And we've added painted arrows on the pavement just to help direct traffic in that area to make sure the lanes are being properly utilized.
So if you come in, you'll now see a yield sign here, and there'll be a yield sign on our property. So each way, parties will be alerted to the fact that this is an active driveway.
Kathleen, is that flashing all the time, or is that only activated when the door's up?
It's activated when someone approaches the drive. So it's any single time that a vehicle accesses the driveway.
Just
Chairman,
as a
sorry.
pulse point, how many fires a year, I guess is the right question, is that used? Is the apparatus store used? Do people rushing out of there?
Mike,
No, back in.
We run between 400 and 450 calls a year on average, so at least
Yeah.
once a day.
Okay, thanks.
When there is a call, just to refresh my memory, you're going to come out onto Vink Drive?
Yeah, correct. So they'll be accessing from here out onto Big Drive. when the apparatus returns, they may, depending on which apparatus, the ladder truck will back in, but the other apparatus may come up and then drive in.
So what you're saying is they'll pull into the driveway as they approach the back of the station house.
Right.
You'll have firemen come out
The
and
chief will
direct traffic.
institute a policy where the officer's gonna get out of the passenger side of the truck, they'll stop traffic, somebody will come out of the other side of the truck and stop traffic there, the driver will be able to enter the rear of the apparatus bay, and, traffic will be stopped.
So when the driveway is being used, it's being used when they're returning from a trip or a call.
That's what I wondered.
They're not, they're rushing out, they're leaving for a call from the apparatus bay. So they'll have the time and the availability to look at their surroundings, to drive in slowly, to navigate with the other vehicles.
And that's now further from the access that they were getting to go
Correct.
to the bank too.
Correct.
Chairman, they also got this variance back when they went for the variances for the two-way, so they are good on the zoning side of it.
Thanks, Mark.
And Kathleen, just to be clear, there would never be an instance where you're exiting the building in the back, crossing the TD driveway abruptly?
If TD's
I
on
won't
fire-
say there'll never be an incident, but not for normal emergency calls. Maybe on a Sunday morning for training exercise, or if, the truck needs to be serviced, then the mechanic can get at it from the back or something like that, but not on the normal.
Just based on, do you block traffic in Vink Drive when you come out? Do you direct traffic there too?
Not now, presently, because we exit in the front right by the traffic light, and we have a traffic controller. So we push the button, and it gives us a green light. We've already spoke to State DOT when we move the apparatus bay into the back. Right now, it's on a 30-second delay. They'll put it to 45 seconds, so the trucks will have ample time to get up, and they'll have a green light.
Got it.
Any other questions from anybody? Any comments from the public on this?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, being there are no comments from the public, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Well, second.
All in favor? Aye. Pat, would you prepare a resolution for this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and just to be clear, the subdivision that we just approved needs to be filed, so the lot we are going to approve this on needs to be recorded by the time you get back here, so I'll sort that out.
Thank you.
Thank you, have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
Melcher to Charles and Stephanie, 417 Seminary Hill Road, public hearing / resolution. Mike, I believe you had no comments,
No comments, everything's been addressed.
as well as Rich, no comments.
All comments have been addressed.
Pat?
All comments have been addressed, and you have a resolution of approval before you this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Being this is a public hearing, is there anyone from the public that wishes to be heard on this?
Mr. Chairman, as there are no public comments, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
We also need a motion for the site plan resolution.
Mr. Chairman, I'll offer a resolution of the Planning Board of the Town of Carmel, number 20-8, October 21st, 2020, tax map number 66.-2-37, Melcher Private Stable, 417 Seminary Hill Road, final site plan.
Have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
everybody.
Good night. Good luck.
Hey.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Next on the agenda is Mahoban LLC, Kennedy 737 South Lake Boulevard, special site plan. Joe, do you have a map for the camera also for the?
No, he said that he would be able to get.
Okay, I meant for the audience, but okay. Mike?
It's basically the same memo, but the applicant proposes to add a boathouse, raised deck above, extend the dock to 25 feet long, and add a pergola to the existing vacant lot on South Lake Boulevard. This is still an intense use for this small lot. To my knowledge, the state DOT has not approved the driveway that was added prior to the owner purchasing the lot. checked the site distance on the walls, on the adjacent lots. They block the view when pulling out onto South Lake Boulevard. The lot is 13-foot-6 wide, and they are proposing 8-foot wide by 12-foot wide boathouse, boathouse or bathhouse? Bathhouse, sorry. I got that confused this time. 10-foot-6 by 15-foot-6 pergola. The walking access to the property is now 2 feet on one side and 4 feet on the other, which is much more than we had before when it was, I think, 1 and 2 or something like that. I wrote down the parking calculations incorrect. It is correct. I apologize for that. It was 1 and 2 is required, 1 is proposed, and they need a variance for that. So that is correct on the zoning table. There are 6 variances that are required from the zoning board, and this project should go to the ECB for comments.
Thank you, Mike. Rich?
So the applicant has provided the Town of Carmel floodplain permit application and will need to be signed by the applicant once approved by the planning board. There's information missing on the application, FEMA map plano number. Approvals from planning board and ECB will be needed as part of the application. A report or drawings need to be provided as part of the application in regards to elevations as related to floodplains. Referrals to ECB and New York State DOT. We're still waiting to get back from DOT. Construction sequence should be provided. The plan should show the location of erosion sediment control measures being used. It's located in Lake Mahopac, wetlands associated buffer. I think those were put on there, Joe.
Yes.
I'm sorry that comment's still in there.
It's okay.
That's pretty much it. The applicant did note that there was a lakefront to be 50 feet, however, only 15 feet is provided. They're aware of that variance, so.
Thank you, Rich. Pat?
And Mr. Chairman, similar comments. So as you've heard, the building has been reduced in size. As Mike indicated, 4 feet on one side and 2 feet on the other side. So now there is clear access past the building, but the pergola remains on the plan. If you remember, there was an outdoor bar that was previously shown. That's been eliminated from the plan. The dock was a little bit confusing on the prior plans. Joel has clarified the plans, so the dock shows as a compliant dock. It meets the requirements, and the area that's non-compliant will be removed. That's been clarified on the plans. And as Mike indicated, the DOT has not yet weighed in on this. That road opening permit is still required from the DOT.
Okay, thanks, Pat. Comments from the board?
I have some comments. I went to the property today and I saw where the building is staked out with the red paint. And I guess I came away with a couple of, several concerns. One is the size of the building. It looks immense for the size of the property. Seems to be overwhelming to me. I'm concerned about the deck on top of the building. I think it's a bit much for that locale, understanding, you know, it's going to be looking over the fences to the neighboring properties. Nobody else has this stuff. It just seems too intense a building for the property. The other concern I have is the dimensions on the plans. There are no dimensions on the plans for the driveway and the rain garden. And I understand some of that will come later, but I would say that the driveway as represented there is actually greatly enlarged compared to what exists now. I drove in and was barely able to squeeze in, parked with my rear to the edge of the road, and I was maybe a foot from the building. So I think dimensions have to be added, but it just also reemphasizes the fact that the building is too big. But those are my comments.
Thank you, Bob.
Joel,
Yes.
can you just clarify what's the width of the property?
The actual width is 15 feet. It depends, you know, again, there are angles over here, but actually from here to here is 15 feet.
How about where the house, where the building is?
It's 15 feet. In other words, we have
Use the
Joel,
mic-
Joel, you have to
use
get the microphone.
And
the same thing I did last time.
where's a 13-foot-6 coming compared to the 15-foot that you're mentioning?
No, okay, let's take a look at that. Over here, there are actually two courses in distance. One is
12.995, which is almost 13 feet. And then there's another 2 feet over here. So the total is actually 13 plus 2 is 15 feet. And if you look at the dimensions here, one of the concerns of the board was having direct access with no obstructions from South Lake Boulevard all the way down to the lake, which we've done now. We have a 4-foot area over here. As Mike said, we have room for 1 parking space over here. But yes, the answer is it's 15 feet. So we have, so if you, that's on the angle. But if you go perpendicular to the property, we have 4 foot, we have an 8-foot bathhouse, and then a 2-foot setback over here. So over here, and a perpendicular to the property lines, it's 14 feet.
The reason I ask is because when I look at the diagram, you know, there's one line going horizontally across that says 14 feet. That's a little bit past where the rear steps are.
Yeah,
And if you go down
14 feet here, right.
Yeah, if you go down a little more, then there's another one that says 10 feet, 6 inches, and then 3 feet. So that would be 13 feet, 6 inches.
Yeah, and then there's another 6 inches over here, that makes it 14. If you, it's on the top side, there's another 6 inches, so it adds up to the 14 feet.
Yes.
For some reason, it came out, it should have been out on the outside of the property so you could see it better. But it is 6, 10, 6, and 3.
Now, I only ask because we are talking about a really tight space, so that's the property line. Now, how much room are the fences going to take up? Is there going to be a fence on both sides?
Well, there already is an existing fence. Yeah, well, I mean, the fence is going to take up, you know, it's not going to take up more than a couple of inches.
Yeah, but
You only have a few inches.
that's what
Yeah, I know.
And that's not shown on the drawing, so that has to be shown on the drawings. Or at least those dimensions, so that they can, the board's trying to understand how that
Oh, okay.
impacts it.
All right, I can add that, that's no problem. I just want to,
Sorry,
if I can
that's
just
what you wanted,
just
Ray, right?
recap what we talked about last time and some of the comments that were made today. As the consultant said, we have reduced the size of the building considerably. We have provided a direct access without obstruction from 6N all the way out to the lake. We revised the docks, which are, you know, again, conform to the code of maximum 25 feet. The portion that extends beyond the 25 feet is going to be removed with all the supports being removed. The other thing is that I know everybody mentioned the fact with regard to the DOT. Believe it or not, after I spoke to you, Mike, I did get a email from the DOT, and there's just a couple of things they asked for with regard to the apron. Originally, they wanted us to pave like the first 50 feet of the property, which we said obviously we can't do. So they've agreed now to just have a blacktop apron from the white line up to the just beyond the property line. The rain garden, of course, again, it can't be designed until until the board is finalized on what the size of the bathhouse is, because that's what is going to determine the size of the rain garden. Again, we've and also I think beside the staking out, I think the board asked for some renderings, which we've done. This is the view I'm looking from. This is the view looking from 6N.
14 feet.
This does not, what we're going to do now, I know some comments were made with regard to the deck on top. This will be a wire-type fence so that anyway, instead of a fence that has dimensions to it. Again, we've reduced it. As you can see, we have a direct path to the lake from 6N over here. This will be our rain garden over here, and behind this area here, we've hidden the porta potty. And then, if we...
Joel, can you use that drawing? So you mentioned earlier that you'll have unobstructed access along that 4-foot area. In fact, the pergola is there, and I think it shows there. Can you tell us what happens as you're maneuvering past the bathhouse?
Yes.
Do you have to go through the pergola?
Yeah, again, the pergola is, as you can see, is just 4 posts and some beams across. There's no obstruction, because
That's-
what
The
happens,
question, Joe, so where are the columns? Are they?
they're right, shown right here. In other words, you have the 4-foot, and once you get past the bathhouse, you probably have an area between the column and the corner of the bathhouse, probably about 6 or 7 feet, so you can have a direct line. Once you get past the bathhouse, you have almost the full width of the property all the way down to the lake.
But
So-
if I can make a comment about the unobstructed access, that works on the diagram, but it doesn't work when a car is parked there. So when I parked my car, between the porta potty and the opposite fence, there was almost no room.
Well, then there's a let me look into that. It's a possibility that we could just flip and have
I
the
don't think
bathhouse behind the car, and then
I
you
don't
have
think,
a...
I don't, it's not going, I don't think that makes a difference.
Well, let me take a look at it. And
So,
the other view...
If I may, so the entrance
No,
here.
Dick, you got it. Use the mic.
Glad that's working. So, I mean, the entrance here is about 12 feet, right? Yeah, it's tight for sure, and it's tight
It's,
particularly because there's a guy wire here. So there's, you know, that takes about 2 to 2.5 feet right now. So when, you know, usually when the car comes in, the car is going to squeeze a little bit this way, and there's going to be at least 3.5 feet between the car and the fence.
All I can tell you is when I went in there, it was pretty tight. It's very tight to make the turn in there from 6 N, so you avoid hitting the wall. And when you park with your end basically at 6 N,
Sure.
your vehicle at 6 N, there's very, very little distance on either side of the car.
Yeah.
And my point is that 4-foot unobstruction
Yeah.
is going to be obstructed by a vehicle.
I mean, it's not going to be a Suburban for sure. Probably not a Smart either, but.
I think most of our concerns here are, you're gonna have a driveway, an apron, a rain garden, a boathouse, and a pergola, and a porta potty. It's a lot of stuff in that little area. What purpose does a boathouse do? What's the function of the boathouse? What is it? Bathhouse.
Right.
What,
Storage of-
Some storage. An area for storage, and also, in other words, let's say you're out there and all of a sudden it starts pouring, you have a place to stay. I mean, and there's a lot of the,
There's nothing
lot
to
a
cover
lot
it,
of the lots
right?
along the lake have what's called a bathhouse. There's no plumbing or anything. The only thing in there is lights. And it's only, as I said, 8 by 12. It's not that large. And we can rearrange this and maybe also relocate the rain garden so that the cars can move over and we can have the 4-foot. I see your point, Robert, but yeah, I think that can be changed. Also, let me just show you, we have another.
But Joel, there's still a guy wire over there, is there not? Is that-
If you recall, if you've been to the property, the electric company has put a new pole in. The original pole was on our property. The new pole is just off our property, and we're just waiting for the utility company to get rid of the pole, number one, and also to change the guy wire so it doesn't come into our property anymore. So
Once that's out of the place, there's going to be ample room to move through.
Will there be guide wires at some point, though?
They're
You know
actually moved to the property line,
They'll be
both of
moved to the
them.
property line, so they don't interfere with any obstruction. Also, we have a second rendering. And this is the view from the lake. Here's the dock, and there's the pergola, and this is the bathhouse.
The rendering's nice.
Yeah, I guess I'm just really concerned that the size of the building is overwhelming for the size of the property.
Okay.
What's the height of the building, Joel? The bathhouse?
The code allows 10 feet, but ours is not going to be 10 feet. We have, 7, but probably be about 8.5 to 9 feet.
8.5 to 9 feet, and then
And then the railing, well, again, the railing, again, it was hard to render a wire fence, but that's going to be just very, very thin wires.
And Joe, can you clarify the height of the pergola next to the building?
Oh, the height of the pergola, it's
Yeah.
from here to here,
Right.
from top to bottom is about 7 feet.
Are all those dimensions on the drawings, Mike?
The height, no, I apologize, the height is not there. The horizontal and vertical, and width and depth dimensions are.
Yeah, I'm asking more specifically about the bathhouse, because I just don't want it like screaming at.
The height is not shown on the,
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
no,
We'll get
I'm
that.
just answering the question.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Joel, the top of the bathhouse, I guess, is observation deck, for lack of a better phrase, right?
Say again?
The top of the bathhouse, that fence is there for an observation deck?
Yeah,
or-
that's all.
What is the detail? Is that a lattice framework, or is it going to be like a stainless
No,
steel
it's a-
cable that's
it's a-
not really visible?
Well, it'll be,
Correct.
if you've seen these cable-type fences, they're thin cables,
Okay,
and they
that's
meet the
what-
code. So
And
it'll
that's
be
a
a lot
six-
less obvious than what we show here.
I'm
And
just
that's the
concerned.
staircase between the pergola and the bathhouse to get up on top?
Yeah, this is a spiral staircase, which will get you to the top of the bathhouse.
It really does look out of place, having a deck with, on top of the building there. It's too much for that size
With due
property,
respect, I've seen decks on a lot of properties around the lake.
but not on something that small.
I have to agree with Bob on this. It's a very tight space. There's a lot going on, and if you look adjacent to your neighbors, they also have tight spaces, just like yours, and they don't have the same things going on. I kind of feel like you'd be intruding on your neighbors with that top deck. And you did say that the boathouse was, or bathhouse, sorry. The bathhouse was merely just for shelter if the bad weather comes in. But you have the pergola. I'm assuming that, if you have the bathhouse for cover, why do you need that top deck? And the pergola is there to lounge and to...
Sure. I mean, the whole property isn't very big, and to your point, my neighbors, they're, in terms of how wide they are, they're at least twice the size of what I have,
And-
probably more.
And they have much less going on than you do.
Right, I mean, that's preference, I guess. They could be here, they could,
I
work
mean,
on things.
You do have a lot of living space from the end of that fence onto the dock and onto your newly built dock. There's a lot of space there for activities. So, again, to me, the deck on top of the building just seems, benefit and drawbacks. It seems the drawbacks outweigh the benefit.
If the bathhouse is merely just for shelter, I don't see a need for the top deck. But again, I mean, there is a lot going on in such a small space.
We dramatically reduced it. It was supposed to be side to side. We want it clear. Although there's nothing really going on here, like you said, the demand was to have a 3-foot or 4-foot area, which we're meeting, right? I mean, how much more can we squeeze it?
When I visited the site today, I looked at the markings that you had. It didn't seem as big as you're saying for the markings closest to the
left or the right
left,
from
to the left, the side that has the guide wire.
Oh, that's, okay, from the lake, that would be the left side, correct. Yeah, but again...
It didn't seem like there was enough clear space through there. To me, it looked like it was
4
maybe
feet.
2 feet.
Huh?
It looked like it was maybe 2 feet.
I'll take a look.
From the markings,
I
it's
did
4.
not put the stakes in, but I'll take a look at it.
Yeah, and I measured it. It's 4.
It's 4 feet?
Yeah.
Oh, it is, okay.
Why don't we do this? I do think you've made some improvements. There's quite a few open questions that Rich and Mike had. Are you close with the DOT, or is it?
Yes, as I said, after I spoke to Mike about the zoning chart, I got an email, and there was a couple of questions they had with regard to the apron and also it was about 3 items there, but minor items that we can take care of. So I'm assuming that, I guess your next meeting is sometime in November.
That's
So
correct.
hopefully by our next meeting, we should have our approval from the
So
DOT.
why don't we do this? Why don't you take care of the questions we asked you tonight?
Okay.
Provide them to the consultants.
Sure.
Relook and see what you can live with. You can take off a foot here or there, a foot, 2 feet. Look and see what you can get. Everyone that spoke up tonight seemed to have a problem with the
size, right?
A lot of things on a small lot. Look hard at if you really need that, as Kim pointed out, if you really need that deck. If you do, bring it back with such. You said between maybe an 8 to 9 foot, maybe it could be a standard 8-foot building. Look at a couple of those things and see if you can work with us in trying to not make it shout at you so much. We want it to still really look nice from 6N as well as from the lake. Your renderings do a great job, by the way.
Thank you.
That was a big help for you. But I think we need another turn of the crank here based on everyone's comments. Are there any other comments we want to
Yeah, Joel,
send the applicant away with?
could you reduce the size of the pergola a little bit to get the bathhouse a little farther off 6N, so you're not hitting it when you pull in with a car, maybe solve some of that problem?
Yeah, we can look at that, to get the bathhouse further away from
Well,
six.
when you're
Further
pulling
back
that
from
thing,
the
Move a
lake.
foot or two, you know.
it's just when you, I think it's gonna solve some of your problems. You make
Okay.
the pergola a little smaller, get the bathhouse a little farther off, maybe give you a little more time to pull in and get to one side of the lot to create that side yard you're looking
Right, yeah.
for.
Okay, I think
And
we'll,
as far as the deck on top, I mean, I don't know, my opinion is if you have a cable rail, which is wide open, or he decides to put a gable roof on it, I think it's gonna be more obstructive to someone across the street than a cable rail and a flat roof, but I don't think that's an issue, the roof. I
Yeah.
don't know why we're still,
Okay.
you know.
it's 10, the size, 10 by 15. 10 by 15.
10 by 15?
Oh, excuse me, 10 foot 6 by 15, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, the size of the pergola?
10 foot 6 by 15, you said?
Correct.
Yeah, so that,
That's pretty big.
Yeah, but again, that's just 4 posts and some beams, of course.
Understand.
It's not.
And
an enclosed
furniture in
structure,
it
it's
or
open.
whatever, you know.
It's wide open. Yes,
Just a thought
Go ahead.
for the architect, not me. Those- the
I'm
four
willing to
columns-
listen.
The 4 columns holding up the pergola, can you incorporate that into the fence? So let those
Oh.
be fence posts?
That's an
You
interesting,
would
yeah.
then You wouldn't look so busy left in your width.
So right, okay.
So, you have fence posts, let those 4 columns be 4 posts.
Yeah, on the fence, that's a
Totally.
good idea.
Open that up.
Yeah, let's look into that. That would also give us wider area to pass through.
And you need the variance anyway, so.
They need the
wouldn't-
variance,
that's a
exactly.
good thought, if we get those 4 posts out of it.
Yeah, okay.
All right, look, I think we had a good discussion. At the end of the day, we want it to be an improvement to the
Hopefully,
lake.
we'll have DOT approval. We'll listen, we will go through all the comments that you made tonight, and we appreciate that.
Because they put a
And,
curb
we'll
cut
see you
without
next
any
month.
approvals.
Can you just, on the next rendering, can you add in the dimensions of the driveway?
Yeah, we'll actually show that on the site plan, so it's clear where the car is going to go.
Because, I mean, we're looking here and there's nothing that tells us.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Okay.
and all the heights that we've asked about. too,
Yes,
all the dimensions.
that's no
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank
See you
you.
next month.
Thank you.
Good dialogue.
Folks, please make sure your microphones are unmuted.
Next on the agenda is 14 Nicole Way, LLZ, 14 Nicole Way site plan. Mike?
Yeah, the applicant amended his proposal again to construct one building, parking, and outdoor storage on the corner of Nicole Way and Route 6 in Mahopac. The site is now accessed through Route 6. There is no bulk tank proposed on this property. What is the height of the retaining wall? You can kind of assume it by looking at the grades adjacent, but I'd like to know on the plan what the actual height is of that retaining wall. The elevations are there, but anyway. Provide floor plans and elevations to confirm compliance with the code. I believe he has them now. And provide lot depth and lot width lines on the plat. I went over with the architect how we need them, so that will be on the next submission.
Thank you. Rich?
Very nice.
So as Mike mentioned, this is a 1.41 acre parcel located at 14 Nicole Way at the intersection of Route 6. The updated project involves the construction of a single building and related infrastructure. A lot of the comments are similar to the ones before. I know there's a couple of pages of comments here, but they're not that bad. I just want the board to know that. The applicant's aware of the referrals that are needed to Putnam County Health, Fire Department, Town of Carmel Highway. They may not need highway anymore. DOT, Putnam County Planning, GML 239N. You would need a permit from the DOT. You need it for the health, for Department of Health, for water and septic. DOT within the right-of-way. New York, well, they may need, no, they don't need anything with the city, and they need a stormwater permit from the state. There should be a legend provided on the drawings. They must be signed and sealed by their respective professionals, because some of them weren't. Traffic and vehicle movement plans should be provided, which show all site distance calculations and pavement markings on the drawings. There were some more detailed comments. Again, most of them have been addressed in the last one. You're just going to add some notes. All curbs and sidewalks and asphalt should meet town code. Detail for the standard asphalt should be 2 inches, not 1.5 binder, and 3 inches, not 2.5. To go to Mike's point, all retaining walls greater than 6 foot must be certified by a licensed structural engineer. Don't know how big the walls are. The area for porous pavement should be shown on the drawing and must be protected during construction. The SSTS expansion area does not match the limits of disturbance shown on sheet S3. That's in the utility sheet. C2 and S3 don't match. You should show oil and propane tanks, and vehicle movement should be provided on the drawings. Other than that, it's just some SWIP information. Again, really straightforward stuff that can be addressed relatively easily by the applicant and his engineer or architect professional.
Thank you, Rich. Pat?
Mr. Chairman, if you remember, the applicant appeared before you a month ago, 2 months ago or so, with the revised concept that you have before you today. It reflected significant changes to the plan, most notably the access. You reacted very favorably to that revised plan. The applicant was directed to prepare the more formal site plan that you have before you tonight. And with those minor comments, that brings that plan to completion. So this is a plan that has been responsive to your concerns and is a form that you can move toward public hearing on.
Thank you. Board members? Comments, questions?
No, I'm glad to see the progress that was made here, and I appreciate, the effort that you all put in to it. So I'd like to see it go to public hearing at this point.
Can you, I also think you've made great progress. I know it's been a tough journey, but I believe you eliminated a building, or certainly reduced the size of the building. You've moved the curb cut down significantly, as Pat said. Can you, since we also played a role in the architectural review, can you tell us about the finishes of the building? I think in this picture here, it looks nice, but can you tell us more about that?
We'll probably have a rendering for the public hearing, if you will. So again, trying to stay in the residential motif, being adjacent to a residential neighborhood. We have the beige area that's illustrated.
Use the microphone, please.
Sorry. The beige area is vinyl siding. The roof is asphalt shingles. The green area, as illustrated on your little sketch, is a faux standing seam roof. The dark area at the base is an EFIS product, a stucco product, and that's pretty much it in terms of the materials and methods of construction.
Rich, do you have all the dimensions of the building? Have they all been submitted to you?
Well, we just submitted the architecturals tonight.
Okay.
They were not submitted with the complete application a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So you're
fully dimensioned, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? I know there's several things that Rich had mentioned, and Mike, I believe, had some comments.
Mr. Chairman, what you could do if you choose to advance this application is to schedule a public hearing conditioned upon them addressing those minor details.
Yeah.
As Rich indicated, they're relatively minor details.
That's the way I'm leaning personally, Anthony mentioned the same thing. I think the intent's been great. I think, you've done a lot of good things here. And if we couldn't speed things up in any way, I'd like to do that. Anything else from the board members? Can you give us a little overview on the building? I don't believe Vicki was on the board when this whole project started.
Not a problem, and we did submit a narrative as well to illustrate. Mr. Zakon, the applicant and the owner of the property, he owns an oil and propane business, delivery business, if you will. The building will be housing his oil storage vehicles that he currently rents from another person, the facility. The trucks that go in here will be empty. There is no filled trucks in there, so basically it's a storage building for his oil trucks, if you will.
And office and storage space.
Right, office and storage space.
No maintenance on the trucks or anything?
No maintenance on the trucks.
I'm personally much happy with this application today than I was 6 months or so ago. I am okay moving this towards a public hearing, Pat.
I agree.
I agree as well.
I just want to reemphasize what Pat said, so the comments that need to be addressed, try to get those sooner than later so that we're not looking at them at the next meeting, that we have them beforehand. I can get something, or we can get something to the board ahead of time saying, hey, we met, we looked at it, you addressed all our comments, here's what's out. I mean, if there's anything outstanding, we'll maybe delay the public hearing, we'll keep it going open longer. So it behooves you to try, get these. We'll get you the comments tomorrow. We'll have Rose send them out to you.
Very good. I
Yeah.
like that very much.
Typically, with the page and a half of comments, we ask you to square that away first, but we understand all the work you've done to help comply here, so maybe we could do something on our end. That's why we want to schedule it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. See
If
you at the public hearing at the next meeting.
We'll be at the next meeting, and you handle the, all of the public hearing notices and the average.
Rose will take care.
Rose takes care of that, so we need to do nothing but show
Well,
up.
I would like you to come with the rendering since we also.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
Yeah, so coordinate with Rose about the notices.
I will do that. Thank you
And
very much.
since it's going to be a
gentlemen.
public hearing, you might want to have two, one for the camera, one for us, and one for the public.
That's fine. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, have a good night.
Thank you, you too.
Old Forge Estates, Bowling Place Road Cluster Subdivision. Good evening. Rich?
So the application encompasses a proposal to amend a conventional 10-lot subdivision on a 45.3-acre parcel to a cluster subdivision, 14 units. The applicant has provided information to Mahopac Falls Fire Department. They've indicated that a Town of Carmel highway permit is not required. The application will be submitted to the ECB upon referral from the planning board, so if the board wants to refer them to the ECB, they can. Putnam County Highway Department access to Baldwin Road. The applicant has noted this comment and provided a copy of a 2010 signed drawing from Putnam County Highway Department, so it has its approval. New York State DEC, they're going to need a pollution speedies permit for groundwater discharge and a speedies permit for stormwater. The applicant's noted it. The subsurface treatment permit will be applied for, and the stormwater permit will be updated. New York City DEP, they have approvals for the stormwater pollution prevention plan, and they need an amended subsurface treatment system from the New York City DEP. They have provided the need for both permits for both a water and a sewer, one from Putnam County. That is where we're at. The applicant has advised the stormwater bond and maintenance, a guarantee will be required, and if there's any public improvements, they will provide a engineering fee and bond for the board to consider.
Thank you, Rich. Mike, did you have comments on this?
No, all of my comments have been addressed even in the last memo. It was a cluster plan, and they were in compliance.
Pat?
So if you remember this, Mr. Chairman, it was a previously approved conventional subdivision. It's now been the revision that is before you is to cluster the plan. That results in substantial preservation of open space on the property.
The presumption is that's a benefit, but as Rich indicated, we should make that referral to the ECB, just to have their commentary with respect to this, but the presumption is there's a significant environmental benefit with this plan. It eliminates significant wetland encroachments that were previously considered for the prior application. So that ECB referral is a smart thing to do. Again, this had prior approvals for various elements that Rich spoke about. Some of those will be preserved. Some of those have to be redone. But at this point, we can, if you choose to advance this to the public hearing stage, it's been a while since the public had an opportunity to comment on that. So it's, I think, ripe to hear what the neighbors have to say about this.
Pat, will we defer to the ECB or have the public hearing first or in parallel?
So I think, why don't you send it to the ECB right away and get their comments, and you can incorporate that into the public hearing commentary.
Can you give us a little, this has been around for a while, I'm not sure everyone's been on a board when this first came through. Can you just give us a little overview of what you have planned? And Pat summed it up well with going from a conventional to a cluster, but tell us what you're looking to build with this cluster. I didn't know some of this information is in the paperwork, but how many homes? When would you like to start this project?
In the spring.
Oh, really? Good.
Yeah, well, they would have loved to start it this fall.
Take us through the project a little bit at a high level.
Being what they are. The previous approval that the project had received, which was basically from soups to nuts, was for a 10-lot conventional subdivision. And the conventional subdivision pretty much has the same road. It came through up through here, and then the road extended across the stream that drains out this wetland and came all the way to the back property. So the 10 lots were, in essence, covering the entire property. As a result of having that layout, the city of New York had decided that we were having two water course crossings because they considered these two wetlands down here to be connected. So that was considered one. And then the crossing up here was considered number two. We were allowed to, but you could not pave the road over this portion of that wetland crossing, which meant we had a paved road, and then you were going to have some other material. Got to the point where it was not going to be something that the town would consider in terms of being able to dedicate the road. So having these large lots, with having to have the HOA maintain your road, economically, it was just more feasible for them to condense the project. It's very similar to what we did in Connecticut Hill Road, if you're familiar with the subdivision that's up there now. These lots will be actually bigger than those lots. The houses will be about the same size. They're looking to build a 22,000 to 2,200 square foot home. So you're looking at like a 0.35 to 0.4 acre lot. So we pulled everything down. So it steps down the hillside. This all remains open space. There's going to be, instead of having individual septic systems on every lot, there'll be 3 primary systems like we did up at Connecticut Hill Road. 2 systems are in operation while 1 system rests, and every year you take 1 offline and put 1 online so that you just constantly change the clock on how much service they're actually seeing. And in terms of stormwater, we're going to have infiltration, and then we're going to have our stormwater pond down here. And we have less runoff than what we were going to have originally with the 10 lots.
Paul, do you still need referral to the New York City DEP?
No.
From us? You've already had that, right?
Yes. When you did seeker, they were allowed.
We did seeker last time.
They were allowed to basically open, and so we've been able to start working with them on the review process.
And are these going to be dedicated town roads?
We were going to offer for dedication.
Okay, so give me a call tomorrow. I just want to make sure that the depths of all of the various bases meet the town code, not unlike what happened at a prior one. And the town is not going to take the stormwater controls. That's what that whole maintenance agreement is. It's going to be up to the homeowners.
There will be an HOA just for no matter what, just because of the sewage, handling of the sewage, which is another reason why I like to get to having the public hearing and at least getting to a preliminary approval, because we have to form what they call a transportation corporation. New York City DEC, New York State DEC will not review and approve our septic plans without there being a transportation corporation formed. Why, I don't know, but that is the way they do things in the state.
Okay.
So
Questions?
the Transportation Authority is going to take over the stormwater
No, it's
maintenance?
strictly for sewage.
So
It's
how is the stormwater going to be taken care of? Because the town's not taking dedication to it.
That would be part of the HOA.
So there'll be an HOA, got
Yes.
it.
You will have an HOA, because you have to have that to maintain the septic fields, because it's a community system.
And Mr. Chairman, I inadvertently indicated that you revisited this and adopted the neg deck for this previously.
Mhm.
So that allowed Paul to go work with the DEP and the DEC.
Comments?
Just a question, was this on town water, or is there going to be a well for the development?
It'd be town water.
And how many houses are there?
14.
Paul, did the original subdivision have ECB approval?
Yes, it did.
Right, but has that permit run out?
Yes, it has.
Okay, so you need to go back and get a new permit for
Yes.
this updated form, okay.
Yes, we actually have less disturbance than what we originally got our approvals for, but yes, we need to get the permit reissued.
Right, understood.
Let's go to this one.
Any other thoughts from anybody? So Paul, this is, my view is, look, we're only meeting once a month, right? However, there are a lot of comments that Rich had. You know, I think we could do a couple of things in parallel. I think you could work with Rich on his comments that I'm looking at right here, that he read. I think we could refer this to the ECB and also proceed to schedule a public hearing.
Okay.
But I just ask you to work on the questions that Rich had. You know, there's literally 2 pages of comments here. I'm sure most of them have been addressed already, but when we come forward for the public hearing, let's be in good shape. That seem reasonable to everybody? Because due to COVID, we're only meeting once a month. I think we can work with you in speeding things up a little bit.
Can we set a public hearing for next month? Because
Yeah.
I think there's very little.
We're going to
Okay.
refer it to the ECB.
Okay.
We're going to schedule a public hearing in parallel to that, and in parallel to that, you work with Rich on some of the comments.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay?
Now I have to work with him, Mr. Chairman, thanks.
Yes. Okay, thank you. We'll see you next month.
Take care.
Thanks, Paul. Okay. Itzler subdivision, 9 Mechanic Street for a 2-lot subdivision. Mike?
All my comments have been addressed. My previous memo said that they were off by .01 on one of the measurements they got a variance on, but they cleared it up with the surveyor, and they were correct. The original number was right, so I have no comments.
Thank you. Rich?
So the project encompasses the subdivision of a 1.5 acre parcel into nearly 2 equal lots. It's suggested that the applicant just provide the planning board a summary, as this last appeared before the board in 2016. I believe most of my comments, they had a letter from 2014 from the Carmel Fire Department. It's recommended the applicant resubmit to the fire department for their review. A highway permit is needed from Town of Carmel. The applicant has noted the need for this, has noted that this permit is required. The stormwater pollution prevention plan for state is required for this. The applicant should note that the original one was under GPO 15002, and now there's an updated one, which is GPO 20-001. And they had provided a performance bond and engineering fee in 2016 of $26,000 and $1,300 respectively. Based on costs as provided in engineering news record, it's recommended that this be adjusted to $29,500 and $1,500 respectively.
Thank you. Pat?
So, Mr. Chairman, this is a simple 2-lot subdivision. The existing dwelling is to remain, and 1 new home would be constructed. The issues with respect to this really relate to its proximity to the RPK townhouse development next door. This is on the bend of the road near their main entrance. So the primary concerns were to make sure that the new driveway access to the new home, which is the side closest to RPK, is in a safe and appropriate location.
They have provided some site distance information. We had some comments about the landscaping on RPK and if they could work with them to eliminate some of the last shrubs so that there's better site distance. Similarly, with site grading and improvements, there should be some integration with RPK. Paul has provided you with composite plans that show this subdivision in relation to RPK next door. So we have a good understanding of how the two would work together. That shouldn't impede this applicant's subdivision. It's simply a matter of making sure that it's done appropriately, understanding that the significant development is going on next door, not here.
Would it, because of that development, could it warrant a traffic study?
No, because RPK did a significant traffic study. There were roadway improvements that were required for RPK. And we're talking about one new home and 1.5 peak hour trips. So that's not going to affect that intersection in any way. It was really making sure that driveway landed in a safe location. And Paul's demonstrated that they're meeting site distances and are in an appropriate location.
Thank you. Comments from people?
Can't believe this was 2016.
I know. What's happened since 2016?
Mr. Ritzler just had some personal issues. The applicant had some personal issues, and there was just some, they got put on the back burner.
No, it seems like it's been a...
Yes.
I mean, I think one of the things that's going to be key here, since it's a residential, is to hear from the public, right? Hear from the neighbors. I think that's going to be key for us. I've driven out there. I think most of us probably have. Any thoughts from anyone on the board other than hear from the public?
There was a public hearing on this, right, initially?
Yes, and there was
2016. RPK was built at that point?
No, I think so.
It was not.
That's why a lot of this was, how does it relate to RPK? Because RPK wasn't there yet.
But it was in process, right?
Yeah.
It was in planning, or it was in front of the board. They were in front of the board at approximately the same time.
Well, what's the plan on, if everything is in place, what's the plan to build?
I think he's planning on giving the property to his daughter so she could build on the lot. And I would expect that to
So
be...
still to be determined.
Yeah, I would expect it to be fairly, something to happen next year.
If no other comments, someone want to make a motion to schedule a public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to schedule a public hearing for this application.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Last on the agenda is 70 Old Route 6, LLC, extension of final site plan approval. Mike?
Yeah, this is on for an extension. I have no objection to the extension.
Rich?
There's no objection to the reapproval of the site plan or extension, as no changes are being made to the project. The board should be aware of the various permits that were required for this. A FEMA permit, it's not in the floodplain. New York State DEC, it has coverage under stormwater, and a wetlands permit, and a solid waste management permit. All the last two, the latter are December of 2022 and February of 2024, they'll expire. New York City DEP SWIP has been approved, and the permit is still valid. There are some things in the original subdivision, or the approval. The wetlands permit is set to expire in July of 2021. There is no documentation regarding items identified in the May 2013 Planning Board resolution, a posted performance bond and engineering inspection fee, which we will have to recalculate and bring up to 2020 costs, since it's 2013 is when it does. A filed and executed stormwater control facility maintenance agreement, and easement information. The applicant has actually provided that, and it should be reviewed by Planning Board counsel for completeness.
Thanks, Rich. Pat?
No objection to the extension, Mr. Chairman. Just one point, part of your approval involved sort of property maintenance issues and cleaning up the site, and your board had continually encouraged the applicant to maintain the property appropriately. So they had done significant work to improve the property, but I think that's just an issue you want to revisit, and perhaps you'd send the building inspector out to the site to make sure the site's in a clean and tidy fashion.
That was one of our pet peeves that I remember well. Actually, one of my notes says to ask Mike for the status of that. Mike, I don't know if coincidentally you've been out there lately, or I have not.
It's been a while.
Paul, have you observed?
I have not been down there.
It was a messy area, to say the least. We're going back at least a year, I guess, but any comments from the board on this? It's going to be a one-year extension. Well, I just, as Pat mentioned, I just think we really need to give, if they're still there, I know you made progress on it, because we checked it not shortly thereafter, a year ago, but just sustain it, make sure it's not an eyesore from the road and for the neighbors.
Okay.
I know it's in a commercial area there, but still. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, what I would suggest is we need, as Rich indicated, the performance bond number needs to be updated. So if, Paul, you can provide a bond estimate to Rich so we can confirm that.
Okay.
And
Yes,
you're going to have the stormwater control facility maintenance agreement put into place also.
Okay.
So what I think we would do in this case, Mr. Chairman, is formalize your extension in a resolution. And I think you can consider granting that tonight, subject to the building inspector doing an inspection. If Mike gives you thumbs up, you can simply sign that resolution when you're ready.
That would be great, because that was the board's biggest issue with this property in the past.
If Mike doesn't come back with the thumbs up, can we put in the resolution that the applicant shall? Theoretically, right, he may be in violation of the original approval that you're extending, so that's what you want to make sure.
Okay. So make a, grant a one-year extension motion with that resolution.
So, Ray would like to make a motion
To grant a...
to grant a extension for 1 year, subject to confirmation by the building inspector that the site is maintained in accordance with the prior approval, and that the applicant will address all of the town engineer's requirements. So moved. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Centennial Golf Club. Do we have I don't believe there's any comments.
So this is the resolution that had been reviewed by everyone on the board and approved. It's simply before you, Mr. Chairman, for you to execute.
We need someone to adopt, to make a motion to adopt.
Just so, Mr. Chairman, the resolution was amended to incorporate Mr. Frankel's comments and was recirculated at that point. So it's not the original resolution that Mr. Cleary had drafted. I'm not going to take credit for that. It's the amended resolution. I'll take credit for amending it.
There you go. It's the new and improved resolution. How about that?
So it's the latest iteration of that resolution.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to adopt the amended zoning referral resolution to send back to the town board.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. By the way, I think we did a nice job on that. We reviewed it thoroughly, and I think the result is a good one for the town.
That was your work, guys, so we
And,
just simply wrote
last-
it down.
Last on the agenda, hopefully people read the minutes of August 19th, 2020. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll make the motion. I will note I made some minor comments to Rose, but other than that, I move the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Good meeting, good discussion.